Any questions? Anything you want to ask? Please. Thank you.
That's good. That's a great question.
We like those questions.
Who was writing poetry? In a not so good question, we went to I don't want to talk badly of the living, but to a famous poet reading, and my friend was, after about 10 minutes, he goes, "Ricky, why is this poetry?" So don't ask that question. Well, anyway, if you don't have a question, here's another conference that happens in November in St. Augustine that Bob was talking about. And should you like to do these things in St. Augustine in November, grab one of those. How's that?
Mr. Flagler's place.
And Mr. Flagler's place is beautiful. You know, every now and then there's at least one good legacy for a robber baron. You know.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that people are somewhat intimidated, like if they're not poets at all, to listen to poets and to even ask you a question? I mean, I think you're all great, somewhat intimidating characters, and so when you maybe go to a conference, I've heard it before in Rosemary Beach. How do you feel that people react to you, people that are perhaps poets themselves, but more like the people in the audience who are know very little about poetry, much less.
I think, when we say are there any questions, and we really hope somebody has questions, I can't for the life of me imagine what in the world you possibly ask. You know what I mean? So it's like, are there any questions? What the hell are they going to ask us? I mean, if it was a craft workshop, then I'd get it. But, it's like, they may be like, I'd love to ask a question right now just to fill this empty space, but I got nothing to ask, And then later somebody will stop you and go, so when did you, and then there's a conversation, but it's more one-on-one. So I don't think it's intimidating. I don't think people are intimidated.
I think the people who are not in the room are possibly intimidated by poetry, or they just flat out don't like it. But usually the people who come in are, I hope, not intimidated, at least by the end. Like I go to a lot of schools and I read, and a lot of times it's undergraduates, freshmen, and they say, I've never been to a poetry reading before, and I wouldn't go to this one, but I had to for credit or something. And
Extra credit.
And a lot of times the student afterwards will say, this is really good, I'll go to another one, which I think is like amazing and perfect. But poetry is intimidating because people don't know how to teach it, and so it makes, if people think there's hidden meanings they don't get, then they get scared. And I don't think anybody likes to do something that they find makes them feel not smart or inadequate, or I can't saw a straight line. I can't build things. I can't fix the toilet. There's a bunch of stuff I can't do. I don't like talking about it or doing it. Yes.
I don't have a question, but I wish that I had a recorder in my head of all the images that in my life that were connected to what you were talking about and what you were reading. And in particular, the shotgun, I recall I taught at UNC Greensboro years ago, and I had a friend who taught in Asheville. And we went up there, and he said, I want to take you to this house that had this big tree growing up through the middle of it. And we went there, and it was fabulous, and we were walking out, and there was a guy with a shotgun pointed at us. That this was a weekend house, and he was hired, and he told my friend, don't you ever come up here without letting me know.
You should have yelled below the house.
Yeah. But if I had heard that poem, I would have known that. Now I do.
That's Right, Auden didn't really mean poetry makes nothing happen. That's right.
And I also was thinking about the question about Vietnam that you raised. People are about the same age. And, you know, we don't show war on TV anymore. Because when people see war, they're not that invested in being in war.
I think the intimidation thing, though, is also a venue thing. Like we do readings at bars. It was interesting here that my instinct, because most reads I do with Tim Siebel's, we read in a bar, and it's more of a restaurant bar. It's packed, and we read, and my instinct right after Pat finished her first poem was to clap, because that's what happens when we read. Tim reads a poem, everybody's yeah, all right, and there's no intimidation at all. It's like, clap, or it's fine. And I know at a conference we don't do that, and so I'm actually more intimidated. I get intimidated to listen to these people anyway because I can't do poetry. But I think there's more intimidation factor in an atmosphere like this than there is if you're at a bookstore, or if you were at a bar or something. So I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah, we're not supposed to have fun here.
Exactly.
It was written into the guidelines.
And the only ones that drank heavily were Rick and I before this.
Yeah,
You had a question.
Well, it's just kind of a comment. What do you think you're doing when you share your work?
hoping somebody will take us home. No.
Actually, it only comes alive then.
Yeah.
It only comes alive then.
Yeah.
Well, and so then my follow-up, it's not a question, it's just a comment. I think of it as cultivation of human senses.
Yeah.
And just
I think for me it was unusual to read stuff that's already accepted in public. Most of the readings I do are stuff I'm working on. So one of the things that happens when you're reading is you're hearing it out loud with a group, and you can, I can't tell you how many times I'm reading a piece and I'm editing it while I'm reading it. I could already hear, okay, they're not responding to that. I think I'll skip the next 3 paragraphs and go to that, And then afterwards, or that night or the next day, I sit down and I'm like, okay, what's this? So a lot of the purpose of readings is to just give it a shot. It's, see what it sounds like for me.
I mean, I don't write for me. I want somebody to hear it. And when I was in college, it seemed like I always wrote between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Nobody really wanted to hear my poem at 2 a.m., but I'd go find it anyway. Hey, you got to hear this, or stomp down the hallway of the English department until somebody was stupid enough to have left their door open and read it to them. And my first poetry teacher, I wrote this long poem and I finished it at like 1 in the morning. I got on my bicycle and I rode down to Lawrence's apartment. I'm knocking on his door at 1:30. Lawrence, man, I just finished this really great poem, man. It's really long. And I hear this voice in the back of the apartment. That's good, Rick. Come back in the morning. I like, there's that, it's not so much, sharing makes me sound better than I am. I mean, I want what I've done to be heard and, reified, and I want somebody to, I would like you to like it, but I would also just me hearing you hear it makes it, it gets a second level of being or something.
And it's the same in all arts, too. I mean, at the bottom of it all, we're writing books, we're writing poems, and we want people to read. If you're not going to go buy Plowshares or buy the book or something, this is how we get it. If we were guitar players, we'd be doing the same thing, but there'd be CDs sitting here. It's an art form, and we want to share it, and we hope people will hear it. And to be fair, most people aren't running out to buy these things, so especially if you're not at one of these situations.
And